The visual metaphors at play in the campaign are as layered as they are deliberate. Depp's solitary trek across the arid landscape is more than a stylistic nod to Westerns. It is symbolic of a personal pilgrimage, an odyssey of self-reclamation. His gait is purposeful but unhurried, embodying a man who carries the weight of experience with quiet dignity. The dusty terrain beneath his boots reflects the ruggedness of his journey, grit earned, not assumed. In one particularly evocative shot, Depp pauses atop a rocky outcrop, gazing into the vast horizon. The camera frames him as a solitary figure dwarfed by the expanse of nature, reinforcing themes of insignificance, introspection, and the eternal search for meaning. It's not just the story of a man in the wilderness, it's the story of a man finding peace in it. The campaign carefully sidesteps anything artificial or overly stylized, favoring instead a stripped-back rawness that allows the emotion to breathe through the imagery. The music selection, sparse and soulful, serves as an emotional undercurrent to the silent narrative. The bluesy riff, with its aching notes and unvarnished texture, feels like an extension of Depp himself. Pain and resilience mingled in perfect harmony. It underscores the campaign's emotional core, that masculinity, like fragrance, is not defined by volume, but by complexity and subtlety. The absence of dialogue is a bold creative decision, lending the campaign an almost meditative quality. It draws the viewer inward, encouraging interpretation rather than instruction. This trust in the audience's ability to feel rather than be told reflects a confidence rarely seen in modern advertising. Dior understands that the myth of Eastwood, and now Depp, is built not on explanation, but on presence. A glance, a silhouette, a shadow moving across sun-baked earth. These become the language of the campaign. Further enriching the visual narrative are close-up shots of Depp's hands, his weathered skin, the fine lines around his eyes. These intimate frames humanize the icon, grounding his character in tactile reality. They suggest a life lived in full, one marked by creation, hardship, love, and loss. There's a poetic juxtaposition between the vastness of the desert and the closeness of these human details, crafting a sense of duality, the external wilderness reflecting the internal. The wardrobe, though understated, reinforces this. Every piece Depp wears is purposeful. The sun-bleached scarf around his neck, the worn leather cuffs, the faint dust clinging to the hems. These are not props, but extensions of the man himself. Altogether, they frame a story that transcends branding. This is not merely an advertisement for a fragrance, it's a visual memoir, a testament to enduring spirit, and a reflection of the wild soul that both Eastwood and Depp embody. Demiche's vision for the campaign, rooted in emotional truth rather than manufactured image, reflects a deliberate departure from the increasingly synthetic nature of fashion marketing. By leaning into the raw, unscripted aspects of Depp's persona, the campaign blurs the line between art and advertisement. There's an almost documentary-like quality to the visuals, as though the viewer is not witnessing a performance but a moment of lived experience. This was no accident. Every shot, every prop, every movement was crafted to feel organic. The wind in Depp's hair, the dust on his shoulders, the subtle fatigue in his eyes. These weren't staged for effect, but embraced as part of the story. The creative team understood that to capture something truly Eastwoodian in essence, they had to eschew polish in favor of imperfection. The grit, the solitude, the quiet intensity, these are the elements that make the shoot resonate on a visceral level. For Dior, this decision was as much about risk as it was about reinvention. In a world dominated by youthful influencers and glossy, algorithm-driven content, placing their brand narrative in the hands of a battle-worn, enigmatic figure like Depp was both unconventional and deeply intentional. Dior wasn't chasing virality, it was cultivating legacy. By drawing parallels between Depp's journey and Eastwood's archetype, the campaign aimed to establish a sense of timelessness that transcends fleeting trends. This wasn't just about style, it was about spirit. The lone figure in the desert isn't just a fashion statement, he's a metaphor for the modern man navigating a world that demands both vulnerability and strength. In positioning Depp as this kind of contemporary cowboy, Dior redefines ruggedness not as brute force, but as emotional resilience. There is strength in stillness, beauty in survival, and style in authenticity. Jean-Baptiste Mondino's role in capturing these themes cannot be overstated. His camera doesn't flatter, it reveals. He allows light and shadow to play across Depp's features, embracing every crease and imperfection as a badge of honor. The compositions often isolate Depp within the vast landscape, reinforcing a sense of introspective solitude. But these aren't images of loneliness. They're meditations on selfhood. The desert, in Mondino's lens, becomes a cathedral of silence where Depp's presence echoes with quiet power. The interplay of textures, the cracked earth, the worn denim, the soft flicker of twilight, adds layers to the story that words could never fully articulate. Even the way Depp's silhouette falls across the sand feels intentional, a visual signature of a man who has stood his ground amid cultural storms. Perhaps most striking is how Mondino captures emotional nuance without requiring expression. Depp rarely smiles, never poses, and avoids direct eye contact with the camera. Yet each frame pulses with narrative of redemption, defiance, introspection, and grace. These choices elevate the campaign beyond commercial confines, transforming it into a visual poem. It invites viewers not just to look, but to feel, and in doing so it offers something rare in modern advertising: sincerity. In a time where so much of branding is about noise, this campaign dares to be quiet, and in that quiet, it speaks volumes. Not just about Johnny Depp or Dior, but about the enduring appeal of truth told through image. The emotional gravity of the campaign is amplified by Depp's own journey, one that mirrors the solitary resilience often portrayed in Eastwood's characters. This isn't just a return to the spotlight, it's a transformation. Depp has chosen not to answer his critics with interviews or media appearances, but through artistic expression. The imagery does the speaking, and what it says is deliberate and layered. By adopting a narrative of quiet perseverance, the campaign reframes Depp's public image from embattled star to introspective survivor. He is not presented as triumphant or vindicated, but as grounded, someone who has emerged from personal chaos with a renewed sense of identity. The symbolism is subtle but potent. A man walking alone through the desert, carrying nothing but the clothes on his back and the stories etched in his face. It evokes the archetypal hero's journey, where the wilderness becomes a crucible for self-discovery and rebirth. This sense of personal redemption is further underscored by how stripped down the visual language is. There are no extravagant settings, no elaborate sets, no gimmicks. The simplicity of the shoot becomes its power. Every element, from the muted color palette to the sparseness of the set, serves to keep the focus on Depp himself. Not the scandal-plagued celebrity or the flamboyant actor, but the human being. It's an effort to reconnect with audiences, not through media spin, but through visual honesty. That's why the campaign resonates on such a deep level. It feels like a genuine reintroduction. Dior is not just selling a fragrance. It's offering a meditation on what it means to survive scrutiny and remain true to oneself. The wardrobe decisions, meticulously curated, also play an integral role in shaping this narrative. The fabrics look sun-bleached and worn, hinting at a life lived outside the confines of luxury. There's a deliberate absence of branding or ostentation. No logos, no flash. Instead, there's a tactile authenticity to each piece, materials that crease, weather, and age alongside the wearer. The costume design functions almost like armor for Depp, not the kind that deflects attention, but the kind that speaks to endurance. The denim is not pristine, it is rugged and scuffed. The leather is not polished, it is cracked and softened by time. This visual language signals a man who is not trying to impress, but to express. It's an aesthetic choice that echoes Eastwood's style, where function always trumped form, yet somehow achieved an iconic silhouette in the process. The campaign's brilliance lies in its ability to appeal across generational lines without pandering. For those who grew up watching Eastwood's films, the references are instantly recognizable. The long shadows, the desolate landscapes, the stoic poses. These cues stir memories of classic cinema and a time when masculinity was portrayed through action, not explanation. For younger viewers, however, the campaign does not feel dated. Depp's presence gives the imagery a modern edge, reminding audiences that introspection and quiet strength are as relevant today as ever. In fact, in an age of oversharing and constant digital noise, the silent power of this campaign feels almost revolutionary. It reclaims the idea that one doesn't need to perform masculinity, but simply embody it. Moreover, the campaign's success is a testament to Dior's understanding of cultural storytelling. Rather than relying solely on aesthetics, the brand has constructed a layered narrative that feels both timely and timeless. The homage to Eastwood is not mere pastiche, it is a carefully considered framework that enhances the emotional impact of Depp's presence. It taps into the myth-making tradition of cinema and uses it as a vehicle to explore deeper themes of identity, perseverance, and transformation. In doing so, Dior elevates fashion advertising into something more profound, an artistic reflection of the human experience. In many ways, this collaboration with Depp becomes a kind of cinematic moment, in itself one that stands outside the typical confines of marketing. It's a visual monologue delivered in silence, a reclamation of image through imagery. Depp doesn't need to explain where he's been or what he's endured. The campaign shows us, frame by frame, who he is now, a man whose complexities are not hidden, but embraced. A man whose strength lies not in his defiance, but in his presence. Through this campaign, Dior has crafted more than just a commercial. It has authored a visual epilogue to a chapter of Depp's life, framed through the timeless lens of Eastwood's legacy and expressed with a depth that few modern campaigns dare to explore. Depp's involvement behind the scenes adds a layer of authenticity that's often missing in high-budget fashion campaigns. Far from being a passive figure in front of the camera, he stepped into a role that was as much about co-creation as it was about performance. Insiders describe his contributions as integral to the direction and emotional tone of the shoot. He reportedly worked closely with the production team to ensure that each frame conveyed something real, something reflective of where he is in his life, both artistically and personally. This wasn't about constructing a new image, but about unveiling the man behind the myth. Depp wanted to avoid any sense of artificiality or pretense and instead embrace the scars and wisdom he has accumulated over decades in the public eye. That intention shaped every creative decision, from the weather-beaten look of the wardrobe to the sparse, almost meditative pace of the promotional video. Depp's stylistic input is evident in the small but meaningful details that permeate the campaign. He advocated for garments that felt lived in rather than styled, materials that carried weight, character, and memory. His insistence on using natural lighting and shooting in a real desert rather than a constructed set added layers of realism that elevated the overall effect. Even the way he moved on camera, slow, grounded, deliberate, reflected his desire to tell a story of survival rather than reinvention. He didn't want to appear reborn or rebranded. He wanted to be seen as someone who had endured, someone who had faced the heat of public judgment and come out the other side not untouched, but unbroken. This distinction is subtle but powerful, and it's one of the reasons the campaign resonates on such a profound level. The emotional candor of the campaign also represents a quiet rebellion against the polished artifice of celebrity culture. It's not glossy or perfect. It's textured, raw, and tinged with introspection. Depp isn't trying to charm the audience. He's inviting them into a private moment, the absence of overt branding, flashy visuals, or traditional commercial. Tactics allows the campaign to breathe. It trusts the audience's intelligence and emotional acuity. This approach has struck a chord not only with Depp's dedicated fanbase, but with a broader audience that is increasingly craving depth and honesty in a world saturated with curated images and fleeting trends. The campaign doesn't demand attention, it earns it through sincerity. The reaction has been nothing short of remarkable. Media outlets across fashion, entertainment, and cultural commentary have praised the campaign's artistic ambition and emotional depth. Many noted that it defies the expectations of what a fragrance ad can be. Instead of selling a lifestyle or an unattainable ideal, it presents a man who is palpably real, flawed, thoughtful, and quietly powerful. Social media has lit up with praise, with fans creating side-by-side comparisons of Depp's shots with iconic stills from Eastwood's films. The parallels are striking, but the individuality of Depp's presence ensures the campaign doesn't feel like mimicry. It's an homage, not an imitation. And in that homage, Depp manages to stand distinctly on his own. Fashion critics have been especially vocal in their admiration, with many calling the campaign a turning point in celebrity branding. It's been described as a moment where fashion remembered its roots in storytelling and character rather than trend-chasing. In a time where fashion ads are often indistinguishable from influencer content, this campaign reasserts the power of visual narrative. It doesn't just show you a product, it gives you a mood, a memory, an emotion, and that's what lingers long after the images fade from view. Dior, through its partnership with Depp, has managed to craft something enduring. They've tapped into something primal, a desire to see ourselves not as perfect, but as resilient, as evolving, as capable of carrying our history with a sense of grace. The Dior campaign featuring Johnny Depp unfolds as more than a visual spectacle. It is a deeply introspective study of identity, legacy, and self-expression. At its core, it challenges the conventions of modern advertising and celebrity culture by daring to strip everything back to the essentials. What remains is a man, a landscape, a scent, and a silence that speaks louder than any tagline. The decision. To use the desert as the setting is not simply a creative flourish, but a deliberate metaphor. The desert, with its harsh beauty and unforgiving vastness, becomes a mirror for Depp himself. It represents isolation, endurance, and an almost spiritual reckoning. It is a place where one cannot hide behind facades, a realm that demands authenticity. In such a space, Depp's presence becomes all the more poignant. His stillness, his introspective gaze, and his solemn posture are not performative but revealing. They ask the viewer to consider the man behind the mythology, the human being behind the celebrity persona. In a world obsessed with visibility, where social media thrives on constant updates and curated images, this campaign's quiet restraint is almost revolutionary. Depp doesn't smile, doesn't pose, doesn't cater to expectations. He simply exists within the frame, letting the wind, the dust, and the golden light do the storytelling. His face, marked by time and experience, becomes a canvas for emotional expression. Every furrow of his brow, every subtle shift in his eyes, tells a story of survival, loss, wisdom, and resilience. These are not the expressions of a man trying to reclaim fame. They are the reflections of a man who has made peace with complexity. This depth resonates far beyond the world of fashion. It strikes a chord with anyone who has ever faced judgment, misunderstanding, or the need to rebuild. The campaign, through its visual language and emotional tenor, invites the audience into a shared space of reflection. It asks us to question our own identities, our narratives, and the roles we've been forced or chosen to play. The Eastwood reference reinforces this philosophical undertone. Eastwood, known for his minimalistic approach to acting and his stoic screen presence, embodied a type of masculinity that didn't rely on dominance or bravado, but on integrity and introspection. Depp, by channeling this energy, isn't simply paying homage to a film legend, he's embodying an ideal that feels increasingly rare. The quiet strength of a man who has nothing left to prove. This thematic undercurrent is what elevates the campaign beyond traditional branding. Dior, in embracing this narrative, positions itself as more than a luxury label. It becomes a curator of emotion, memory, and meaning. The decision to align with Depp at this juncture in his life and career is not without risk, given the controversies that have shadowed him. But it is precisely this risk that gives the campaign its edge. It feels like an act of faith, not just in Depp's star power, but in the power of redemption, resilience, and storytelling. It is Dior betting on substance over surface, on narrative over novelty. The fragrance, Sauvage, emerges from this tapestry not merely as a product to be consumed, but as an emblem of the ethos being conveyed. Its name becomes a mantra, a reflection, of inner wildness, emotional honesty, and the untamed parts of the human spirit that refuse to be domesticated. The marketing, though subtle, taps into this deeper layer. Rather than telling us what Sauvage smells like, it shows us what it feels like to live in accordance with its essence. The raw terrain, the natural lighting, the silence, they all evoke sensations that a traditional ad couldn't hope to replicate with mere words. It's an experiential portrayal, one that asks the viewer to feel rather than interpret. As the campaign circulates globally, it is also reshaping the way we think about male representation in fashion and media. Too often, masculinity is portrayed as either hyper-aggressive or emotionally vacant. Here, we see something different. A man who is self-contained but not closed off, rugged but not inaccessible. Depp's portrayal challenges the binary. He is tender without being weak, strong without being stoic to a fault. He embodies the contradictions that exist within all of us, the tension between visibility and solitude, between vulnerability and power. And in doing so, he opens the door for a new kind of masculine ideal, one that allows for nuance, history, and emotional texture. The campaign also underscores the importance of artistic control and collaboration. Depp, by taking an active role in shaping the shoot, ensured that the final product was not a caricature or commercialized version of himself. He treated the opportunity not as a job, but as a canvas, and Dior, to their credit, gave him that canvas. They recognized the value in letting an artist be an artist. That mutual trust is evident in every frame. It's a rare alignment in an industry that often prioritizes efficiency and image over intention and depth. Even the musical choices, minimal, bluesy, evocative, further layer the emotional resonance. The score doesn't instruct us how to feel. It creates a mood that allows feelings to arise organically. It's the kind of artistic sensitivity that elevates the campaign from commercial to cinematic. Each component, lighting, costume, setting, sound, works in harmony to create something that feels not like an ad, but like a memory, like a moment suspended in time. The cultural timing of this campaign cannot be ignored either. In an era where public figures are constantly under scrutiny, where narratives are often shaped by viral headlines rather than truth, Depp's quiet re-entry into the spotlight feels almost defiant. Not in a confrontational way, but in a way that suggests endurance. He doesn't ask for forgiveness or applause. He simply stands there, looking out at the horizon, existing. And in that existence, there is something deeply powerful. It's the power of presence, the kind of presence that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. For Dior, the campaign's success is not just measured in sales or clicks, but in cultural impact. It has sparked conversations not just about fashion or fragrance, but about authenticity, redemption, and the ways in which we tell stories about ourselves and others. It shows that branding can be more than persuasion. It can be poetry. That marketing can be more than message. It can be meaning. And it proves that when you trust the audience to feel rather than instruct them to buy, the result can be transformative. The end, Johnny Depp's Clint Eastwood-inspired Dior shoot is not simply a return, it is a reckoning, a moment of clarity amidst the noise, a visual declaration that identity is not a fixed performance but a fluid, evolving narrative shaped by trials, truths, and time. Depp, through his weathered visage and silent strength, becomes a vessel for that narrative. He invites us to see not just him, but ourselves, to find in the desert a reflection of our own wildness, our own search for meaning, and our own desire. To be seen, not for who we were or who others say we should be, but for who we truly are. Through this campaign, Dior and Depp have created not just a visual homage to the past, but a timeless portrait of the human condition, unfiltered, unapologetic, and undeniably powerful.